In Health Watch, Milwaukee parents say the city is not doing enough to protect their kids from lead. More than 11% of Milwaukee's children in 2016 had lead poisoning. Compare that to the national average, which is around 3%. Wisconsin health officials are reviewing Milwaukee's lead prevention program after several reports highlight deficiencies in keeping lead away from kids. Adriana Diaz is in Milwaukee, and she spoke with one concerned family.
Amina Al-Mujahid painstakingly prepares water for her family, filtering it pitcher by pitcher.
It's just an ongoing process of buying filters.
And you do it by hand?
Yes.
Every day?
Every day.
Last year, her youngest son, Shoaib, had a blood lead level of 11.4, more than double what's considered lead poisoning.
You swore by Allah.
Lead can affect IQ, and Amina and her husband, Nadir, believe it stunted their 5-year-old son's brain development.
In my assessment, he's operating more on a 3.5-year-old level. If I say, hey, what's your name? Or how old are you?
What does your son say?
He'll look at you. He'll look at you like he's trying to decipher, figure it out, but...
Milwaukee health officials say lead from paint poses the greatest risk to local families, but the Al-Mujahids believe it's in their water, after recently learning they have lead service lines which supply water to their home. The city says its water meets federal lead standards and is treated to prevent lead from leaching from pipes. Improperly treated water in Flint, Michigan caused widespread lead contamination there 3 years ago. Up to 10 million homes nationwide still have lead service lines, even though Congress banned lead plumbing supplies more than 30 years ago. About 74,000 are in Milwaukee, where the city has a program to split the cost of replacing lead pipes with homeowners. But so far, only 1% has been done.
Anytime they touch the water, it's alarming for me because I'm thinking about the exposure. Their lives are important to us. But it's difficult to see the city not care.
The family says they tried to get a free water filter under the city's lead program, but when they went, none were left. That fits in with a recent review of the city's lead prevention program ordered by the mayor, which found insufficient staffing, underfunding, and claims of mismanagement. The Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program doesn't have records of investigating about 100 addresses where kids' blood lead levels reach 20 or higher. Health officials also don't know if 4,500 families received follow-up letters with children's lead test results.
How did these kids slip through the cracks?
Well, a big part of this we don't know the answer to.
Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett.
I was told by my staff that we did not have the documentation that established with certainty that all the kids had received this letter. That was enough for me to say, well, then we're going to send out another reminder.
Oh, the problem is devastating. I mean, we've got...
Wisconsin Congresswoman Gwen Moore wants the federal government to investigate and has raised concerns over the funding and effectiveness of Milwaukee's lead removal programs.
It's really important to have this independent audit done by the Centers for Disease Control.
Mayor Barrett is not against that idea.
I welcome the CDC. I welcome the Housing and Urban Development. I think that over a couple-year period, we didn't do what we needed to do. I want to get back to the basic blocking and tackling.
Amina says her family has had to pay the price for the city's dysfunction.
We're supposed to protect our children, but I can't do anything with people that don't want to meet us halfway. We had to do our own research and do what we can in our house and buy what we need to clean our water.
CBS correspondent Adriana Diaz reported extensively from Flint, Michigan on the water crisis there a few years ago, and now she is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So, Adriana, what's the biggest concern for residents there with the lead?
Well, the mayor says it's actually not the water, it's lead paint. There are at least 100,000 homes in Milwaukee that still have lead-based paint. The mayor said that's fairly typical of a city this size with its industrial past. But some residents are concerned that it's not just in the paint, but it's also in the water. Now, about 74,000 lead service lines exist in Milwaukee in neighborhoods like this one. Those are the lines that bring the water into the home from the water main that's out in the street. Now, the city purposefully treats that water so that the lead from the pipes doesn't get into the water supply. And the city says the water is just fine, that there are lead service lines across the country. And that's the way that they have figured out to keep the water safe. But the mayor says what the biggest concern is now is mismanagement in the city's childhood lead prevention program. That's what the report he called for explained. They said that there's underfunding, understaffing, and claims of mismanagement that have led to the fact that they just simply don't know if there are any records for certain follow-up with families. They said that no records exist about whether or not 100 addresses were followed up with where there were children with lead levels in their blood of 20 or above. That's really off the charts. We asked the mayor, well, where did those records go? Did they just disappear? He said, well, it's not to say that those children weren't followed up with. It's just we don't know whether or not they were followed up with. And to be safe, we're going to do all those follow-ups again. He said it could have just been human error, someone who inputted it incorrectly into the system, and they're investigating that.
So the best case scenario, it was just sort of sloppy bookkeeping. But the worst case scenario is the whole thing has sort of been mismanaged and the health of many, many children is at risk here. So moving forward, is that what they're going to do, sort of tighten up this program?
Exactly. So now this program is under a microscope. The mayor says it's his personal duty to make sure it's run correctly. He describes himself as someone who's really at the forefront of lead prevention. He said, you know, there are other cities that might have this problem, but here in Milwaukee, we decided to really look at our program and see where the holes are. But yeah, like you said, the worst case scenario is that kids did slip through the cracks who had lead poisoning, did not get the proper follow-up, did not get the home visits where a specialist comes into the home to figure out where the lead is coming from. The most common sources of lead are lead from the soil, lead from paints, you know, so when the paint chips or dusts and might be in the air, or lead, of course, from water.
Yeah, well, you know, as we know, the damage to lead can be long-term. It can be very, very serious. So hopefully they can fix this problem. Adriana Diaz, thank you.